Hello, class. So today we wanted to talk about Buster Keaton. So I'm going to do a little background on Buster Keaton before we see some of his shorts and his one of his features, which is going to be Steamboat Bill Jr. But I wanted to give you a little bit of a biography on Buster Keaton. So his real name was Joseph Frank Keaton. Keaton, Keaton. Okay, so Joseph Frank Keaton, but his stage name was Buster Keaton. Okay, he was born October 4th, 1895 in Piqua, Kansas. Piqua, Kansas. And of course, and then he's going to die on February 1st, 1966. So he was about 71 years old when he died. Okay, but how did we get there? How do we go from beginning to his death, right? So as a child, his mom, of course, his name was Myra. And his mom, his dad, which was Papa Joe, they were an act called the Three Keatons, and it was a vaudeville act, so a stage, usually probably a comedy type routine, which is vaudeville, and he was known as the boy who could not be damaged. So as you can imagine, Dad was probably a little rough with him. At the age of 5, he started in this show. And the act was basically raising the child, raising how to raise a boy, but then in a comedic way. So a lot of times Dad would throw Buster across the stage, built handles into Buster's outfit so he can grab him easier, or hang him up somewhere, or throw him somewhere a lot easier. And so that was what Buster was used to growing up. Dad was rumored to be an alcoholic, which is going to take into play later in life, because Buster is also going to face some alcoholism there as well. Mom was part of the act, but she played a lot of instruments during the act as well. Okay. Now, Buster learned growing up that you got bigger laughs if you played what we definitely define now as deadpan. If you were stoic and serious and didn't show a reaction, and funny things happened to you, or you were doing funny things but didn't realize you were doing funny things, that your laughs were bigger, because it seemed like you didn't understand what was happening to you or what you were doing. And the audience connected with that, and usually you got better laughs. So it was all about taking that pain or physical pain, absorbing it, and channeling it into what others saw as comedy. And later in life, he does a lot of things, and he gets bruised up a lot, okay? Because we didn't have stunt doubles back then. All these sequences you see where he's doing some kind of physical comedy, that's him actually doing it, not a stunt double. So as you can imagine, he would get bruised up over his life as well. Now, his philosophy, of course, is you fall down hard, you get right back up, and remain stoic. The typical deadpan type thing, okay? So he meets a man by the name of Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle, who we've already met, and you've already done some stuff with, and saw some stuff with him. And they are going to be a comedy team, just about. Not like a duo, like an Abbott and Costello type, which we saw in the last unit, but they're going to do 14 films together, and he's sort of like a mentor to Buster as he gets into this, into the show business, okay? He's doing a lot of shorts at this time, 1921, 1920, so 1920, 1921, 1922. He's doing short films, which are one-reelers or two-reelers, 15 to 30 minutes long. Usually he's a hothead or he's love-struck, and things ensue. 1923, well, he gets married in 1921 to Natalie Talmadge. And they will go on to have 2 kids together. Now, they stay married from 1921 to 1932, which is this next section we're going to talk about. So, in 1923, Natalie Talmadge at the time is not brothers because she's a girl. She's related to a guy by the name of Joseph Schenck, or Schenck. There we go. Who is a head of a studio, or a high up in the studio, and he works on a contract with Buster, and basically cheats him out of stuff. Gives him creative control, but negotiated that any future future playing of these films or things moving forward, that Joseph would own the rights to the films that Buster Keaton made. So what's going to happen later in life is that when these things start getting replayed, Buster's not going to see any royalties from that because he gave those rights away, which at the time I don't think he really paid attention to or cared about, or felt that Joseph had his best interests at heart. But in the end, Joseph is going to end up cheating him out of future royalties for these shows. He did get creative control, which is probably what he was looking for at the time. But he wouldn't see any future broadcasts. Now, 1926, he also makes transitions into feature films. One of his most famous is called The General, where he plays a Confederate railroad operator. And the General, of course, is the train. We're not going to watch that in this class, but it is probably considered a classic of Buster Keaton. I chose the feature Steamboat Bill Jr. because there's some better comedic sequences there that are more iconic in nature, so we did that one as well. So 1928 is when he does Steamboat Bill Jr., where he plays a steamboat captain who falls in love with the daughter of a more wealthier steamboat operator. His steamboat is a little derelict and not very fancy. This other guy has a much fancier, is much wealthier, and he's trying to win the daughter's hand in marriage there. Okay. 1928 is also right when The Jazz Singer starts coming out. So we're going to see a shift after 1928 into more talking movies. And as that happens, a couple things come into play. One, his voice is more of a deep baritone. Well, you'll hear it in Limelight. We're going to see a clip of Limelight with Charlie Chaplin. And you can hear that his voice is not necessarily what we would expect out of a leading man. As a supporting character, yes. It reminds me a lot of Andy Devine. And if you don't know who Andy Devine is, besides that there's a road named after him, if you ever watch Disney Robin Hood, he plays Friar Tuck. But he has that gravelly, low voice, which is a peculiar voice. It's an interesting voice, but it's not what we see in a leading man type voice. So his career declines there, but he also gets involved in drinking heavily. He becomes he's an alcoholic, and that starts affecting his work to such a degree that MGM, which is the studio who he's working with at the time, starts stripping creative control away from him, and then outright fires him in 1933. So his wife divorces him in 1932. Studio fires him in 1933. He loses his mansion. His children move away, and so he's basically adrift. He meets somebody else for a brief time, which is his second wife, which is May, who was a nurse at the time. Now, they're only married for 2 years, 1933 to 1935. Sorry, I dropped something. And then he starts working for Columbia in 1939 in a series he gets hired for 10 30-minute comedies. Besides that, he works as a background guy helping other acts pull off gags. One of the most famous acts he helps work with is the Marx Brothers. And then in 1940, he marries his third wife, who's going to stick with him till the end, and her name is Eleanor. Eleanor they married in 1940, and she's with him when he dies in 1966. So Buster Keaton got a lot more famous later, as a lot of his films saw a new audience, especially with television, and they were able to be played in that 30-minute time slot with commercials and stuff. He started seeing a lot more fame and popularity, although he didn't necessarily see the monetary incentives from that. But Buster Keaton, we're going to see 3 shorts: The Blacksmith, the Garage, and 1 Week. 1 Week's one of his earlier ones. And then we're going to see Steamboat Bill Jr., and then he'll pop up one more time in when you do Charlie Chaplin. So to stay tuned, make sure you do your reflection logs for every film we watch, as long as it says so in the announcements. And we'll see you next time. Just kidding. One more thing. I just wanted to point out with Steamboat Bill Jr., he co-directed it, he co-wrote it, and he co-produced it. So he got this film going. The big sequences I want you to look out for when we watch it is the 3-story building. There's going to be a storm that rolls into town, and watch how he interacts with a building as well, which is the cyclone sequence. And then there's a building sequence there too. So that's it. Hopefully you enjoy all the things from Buster Keaton.